I think the market is still headed lower. I think what is ultimately going to happen, I think, to blow some more air back into this bubble, it's not just about the Fed kind of, pulling back on some of the future rate hikes. I think it's going to take an actual cut. I think the Fed's going to have to go back to zero if they want to try to blow more air into the stock market bubble. And, I don't think Trump is going to ever follow through with the 25% across-the-board tariffs. I think that's all a bluff. Eventually, he'll probably take that off the table. But I think what's going to ultimately help commodity prices and some of those stocks is going to be a drop in the dollar. And in fact, I think a precipitous decline in the dollar is coming when traders really understand where the economy is headed, which is into a worse recession than the one we had in 08 and 09, that the Fed is not going to keep raising rates, that they're going back to zero, that they're going to do another round of quantitative easing that's going to be larger than the first three combined. And when the dollar really starts to fall, that's what's going to stoke global demand for all these commodities.
In 2008, we had a problem because of too much debt. Christopher, since then, the debt, oh my gosh, the debt everywhere in the world has skyrocketed.
Big debt crisis on the horizon. We have a debt squeeze that'll emerge on the horizon.
The whole global economy is slowing down. The cheap money scam is running out of juice. And we got this huge debt bubble that's ready to explode.
So the debt everywhere has gone through the roof. So the next time around, it's going to be the worst in my lifetime.
President Trump reportedly shrugged off concerns over the ballooning national debt, telling senior advisors in an early 2017 meeting, "Yeah, but I won't be here." When presented with charts and graphics laying out the numbers and showing a hockey stick spike in the national debt set to occur in the not-too-distant future. The alleged incident from nearly 2 years ago comes from the Daily Beast, citing a source who was in the room, which we note is anonymous, the standard operating procedure for most anti-Trump hit pieces. As such, one may want to take the report with copious grains of salt. Citing another anonymous White House official, the Beast reports that President Trump hasn't addressed the national debt in a truly meaningful way, despite his public lip service. "I never once heard him talk about the debt," said the totally anonymous source. Then again, former Trump official Mark Short, who went on record, refutes the anonymously sourced suggestion over debt worries, telling the Beast that he believed Trump recognized the threat that debt poses, as evidenced by the president's repeated concerns over rising interest rates. But there's no doubt this administration and this Congress need to address spending because we have out-of-control entitlement programs, Short said. It's fair to say that the president would be skeptical of anyone who claims that they would know exactly when a debt crisis really comes home to roost. The Beast adds further to the notion that Trump is concerned about debt. However, it's ultimately up to the legislative branch, which has the power of the purse. Recent reports have suggested that Trump is determined, at least rhetorically, to address the issue. Hogan Gidley, a spokesman for the president, noted that the president and his team have proposed policies to achieve some deficit reduction, including in his first budget that actually would have balanced in 10 years an historic common-sense rescissions proposal. But Gidley also passed the buck to the legislative branch. While the president has and will continue to do everything in his power to rein in Washington's out-of-control spending, he said, the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse, and it's time for them to work with this president to reduce the debt. So, growing our way out of debt? Another person close to the Trump campaign, conservative Heritage Foundation economist Stephen Moore, suggested that Trump may not be focused on debt reduction because Moore convinced him that it can be solved through other means than spending cuts or tax hikes. Moore, a conservative economist at the Heritage Foundation and an economic advisor to Trump's 2016 campaign, recalled making visual presentations to Trump in mid-2016 that showed him the severity of the debt problem. But Moore told the Daily Beast that he personally assured candidate Trump that it could be dealt with by focusing on economic growth. That was why, when he was confronted with these nightmare scenarios on the debt, I think he rejected them. Because if you grow the economy, you don't have a debt problem, Moore said, adding, "I know a few times when people would bring up the enormous debt, he would say, 'We're going to grow our way out of it.'" Moore recalls that Trump's belief in robust economic growth would solve America's problems and allow his administration to justify expensive and ambitious proposals, such as cutting taxes, pursuing large infrastructure projects, and avoiding deep cuts to Social Security and Medicare. The results have not been what Trump and Moore have promised, at least not yet. Economic growth increased over the past year, including a robust 4.1% in the second quarter of 2018. But the federal deficit has ballooned as well, in part because the government has taken in less revenue because of the tax cuts. Current forecasts are not too rosy about the future economy. Recently, both Trump and some Republican lawmakers have hinted at regret over their approach. Earlier this year, Trump conveyed his disappointment with signing a large spending bill, particularly after he saw typically friendly allies on Fox News tear into him for supporting legislation that they viewed as funding Democratic priorities, exacerbating the national debt, and ditching his pledge to build a gigantic border wall, according to a report at the time in Axios Daily Beast.
There are a lot of things that I'm unhappy about in this bill. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't have had in this bill, but we were, in a sense, forced. If we want to build our military, we were forced to have. There are some things that we should have in the bill. But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever. President Obama signed one that was actually larger, which I'm sure he wasn't too happy with either. But in this case, it became so big because we need to take care of our military.
The Washington Post reported late last month that Trump has instructed his cabinet to trim fat within their budgets. However, the president has also set strict limits on what types of programs can be cut, while also proposing increased spending in other areas. So, is President Trump truly cavalier about the national debt? Or is the Daily Beast's source perhaps an ex-admin official with an axe to grind?
The next bear market will be the worst of your lifetime. What does that mean? How bad do things get? Are we talking another Great Depression? Are we talking another World War? We've got allegedly a trade war with China right now. Like, how bad does this get, in your opinion?
Well, I'm older than you, I'm pretty sure. And in 2008, we had a problem because of too much debt. Christopher, since then, the debt, oh my gosh, the debt everywhere in the world has skyrocketed. The Federal Reserve, the central bank in the U.S., increased its balance sheet by 500% in 10 years. I mean, that alone is an unbelievable statement 20 years ago. People could not have conceived in their wildest imaginations that any central bank, major central bank, could increase its balance sheet by 500% in 10 years.
Yeah, that's insane.
The world did not work that way. It could not happen, but it has. So the debt everywhere has gone through the roof. So the next time around, it's going to be the worst in my lifetime.
Where we have a big debt crisis on the horizon, we have a debt squeeze that'll emerge on the horizon. What is important in this cycle is that we have a big difference in the financial conditions of different people. The rich and the poor, the polarities become greater. And so we have greater amount of populism that exists now, which would make the next downturn in the economy more difficult. There'll be more conflict. Populism is a big effect. And then we also have the emergence of China, and to some extent India, but particularly China, in terms of competition. Most importantly, China in terms of the geopolitical and being all over the world. So I would say that's the character of the environment in relationship to the cycles. All these cycles have happened over and over again, and the period we're in is quite like the late 1930s, because central banks don't have much ability to ease if they're turning down, and they're beginning to tighten monetary policy. 1937 is when the Federal Reserve and some other central banks tightened monetary policy, and we're in a position similar to that now, I think.